Hey cuties, this is The Dark Side of Perfect. I'm your host, Maggie, and this is episode 1 of season 1 of our podcast. And I am so excited that you clicked on and are listening today. For this episode, I want to introduce season 1, what it's going to be about, and set a baseline understanding for our future conversations that we're going to be having on this podcast. So let's get into it. For season 1, I want to start with my story and then pull others in future seasons. I have a lot of good ideas of introducing what it means to be perfect and some of the, vocabulary that we're going to be using for the rest of this podcast and tying things back to. And then starting in season 2, 3, and so on, I want to bring on guests to explore their story. But I think it's really important for you and me to talk about my story, our story, set a baseline of understanding before we get into other people's stories, figuring out their steps. And I think it's just important to start somewhere and then build upwards. So, this episode specifically is going to be setting the foundation, if you will, of our future conversations. We're going to be talking about what it means to be perfect, what perfect means to me specifically, pressure, the what I'm calling the results of perfect. I want to start with that, with the results of perfect. So, I think when people think of being perfect, they think of a lot of different things. If I asked 10 people what perfect means, I would get 10 different answers. I don't know what those answers would be. I guess I could go ask 10 random people right now, but I assume it would be very outward, very perception based, very much have the best grades, have the best feed, look put together, be put together. When someone looks at you, they see she has everything together. Or when they talk to you, they think, wow, why don't I have this together? She's perfect. And that feels like something that we should want, that we should aspire to have that perfection all the time, and that we hope that when people talk to us, they think, wow, she really has it all together. But perfect is a moving goalpost. We are constantly reaching and feeling behind and feeling not good enough. I was talking with my sister the other day, and she was telling me how she feels behind and how she's not doing enough. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. And just because you feel like you're behind and like perfect is out of your reach doesn't mean that you're not actually achieving it. And that was my point with that. So, with the results of perfect, I want to use that as the vocabulary. I don't want to say anything derogatory about it because I don't think that the results should be seen as anything derogatory. I think that they make us, they're part of us and they help us move forward every single day. And sometimes what the results of perfect result in is results not equaling wants. For example, people pleasing is a result of perfect, and you go after what you think other people want and what you think they expect you to do, and sometimes you don't even know what you want. So, one of the results of perfect is that you don't really know what you want because your entire life you've been looking at other people and thinking, what do they want? How can I correct myself to provide something that they want? So, a lot of season 1 and so on is going to be some internal self reflection. Some episodes are deep, some of them are full of whimsy because I believe wholeheartedly in whimsy and the idea that exploring whimsy is how you find who you are. However, some of the episodes are deep in season 1. I have episodes about grieving who you never got to be, and some more internal reflection kind of episodes that make you think and might make you cry. It's making me cry right now. I've been very emotional this week. So then there's also perception. I definitely have an episode about perception, even imperfectly. And I think perception is hard. It might be honestly one of the hardest episodes I'm going to record in this season that I have planned. But perfect is what it looks like versus what it is. So when you see someone and you talk to them and you think, wow, they are working out every day and doing yoga and they sound so zen and they're wearing a bunch of rings on their fingers and their outfit is perfectly intentional. They look like they woke up today and knew exactly what they were wearing. I can guarantee you that's not always true. And some days we wake up and we do know exactly what we're wearing, but some days we wake up and we change our outfit 15 times. Sometimes we can't go to sleep because we're so stressed out and burnt out, and fear is has a clutch on our minds like an iron grip. I know that sometimes we break a plate and we brush it off and it's funny and I wanted to get rid of that plate anyway. But sometimes you drop a plate and you bust into tears and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just the way that it is. And part of that is being a woman. And I want to have some episodes on cycle syncing and emotional regulation and emotional intelligence, which I think is really important when it comes to quote unquote being perfect. But, we have ups, we have downs, we have days that we're perfect, we have days we feel perfect, and we have days when we feel like a toad on the side of the highway. I don't know. So basically, what I'm trying to say is why you should care about this podcast and why you should care about you is that life is a roller coaster. It's a wave that we're just riding. And sometimes when you're on that wave, you feel like swimming against it, like going against the wave in order to be on someone else's wave and or even to be on the ideal wave that you think life should look like. But your wave is exactly what you should be doing right now. And if you want to change your wave, then you have to put in the work and the self realization to change it and to transform it into the ideal wave. And honestly, where your ideal wave is right now, it may look different in 10 years. You may think, wow, what was I even thinking with what I thought was ideal? It's different, and it's okay to change your mind. So, when we're defining perfect, I want to break it up real quick into external and internal pressure. So, external, society, social media, family, culture, all of those things influence our idea of perfect and how we are defining perfect for ourselves. I think with the rise of social media, it's been so hard to figure out what's normal. And I am not that I'm perfect by any means, but even I really struggle with that, with thinking, I love reading, for example. And so I follow some reading accounts on social media, and all of these girls are reading 300 books a year, and that's fantastic for them. I don't have the time to do that. And I feel so much external pressure. Well, I guess it's internal pressure with the comparison to an external pressure to read 300 books. And that's not obtainable for me. And so part of the self realization I've been talking about is figuring out what is obtainable for you and working towards a goal that really is something that you want, not something that you compare yourself to others against. And I will do an episode on comparison as well. And then internal pressure is identity, fear, self worth, control. And sometimes we mistake that pressure for motivation. We think if I just wait until the last minute, I'll knock out a great essay. If I could just do better, be better, I'll make more money. But the pressure, it's so heavy. It's so heavy. And using it as motivation is heavy. And so I am also going to explore in this season some alternative forms of motivation and how not to use pressure as a form of motivation because while I do agree that it has its benefits and its days where it is good to have that pressure for motivation, due dates, deadlines, expectations, expectations aren't bad. They're just, we put so much credit towards them, towards expectation. We hold it to such a high standard that we can't see anything else. A personal story about internal pressure is when I was younger, I don't know, middle school, elementary school, I don't know, younger. I felt external pressure from my family, of course. As the oldest daughter and the daughter of someone with a PhD and the granddaughter of someone with a PhD, education was really highly valued. And I've always been a little bit insecure about my intelligence, not because I'm not smart, because I am, but I have so much internal pressure around being smart. And I think it originated externally, but then I really held that in my heart. And I put a lot of my self worth on being smart. So when I was younger and I would get anything less than 100% on a paper, I would take a marker and I would write failure across my paper. And I would look at it over and over and basically tell myself that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't good enough because I didn't get the perfect grade. And that's a lot of weight to carry. That's a lot of pressure to use as motivation to get 100 on the next paper or assignment or whatever it was. That's so much for younger me, but also for current me. And I'm sure it would be a lot of pressure for you, whatever the equivalent of writing failure across your papers is for you. So basically, connecting your self worth to a specific thing instead of a multitude of things can just create that pressure. What being perfect means to me is one of my personal rules. It used to be don't actively try to make anyone proud of you, which is a horrible goal because you will only find disappointment. And I don't know exactly where that came from, but then it shifted to make yourself proud, make myself proud. And with all of my internal pressure, that's incredibly hard. I'm a hard person to impress and feel self worth around because of all of the internal pressure that I hold in my heart. And now my goal is that I want to be happy. So so my goal shifted from external validation to internal validation to I just want to be happy. And I've been taking a lot of steps, which is why I started this podcast to talk about those steps, to be happy and shift from self worth, external worth, to finding what I want to do instead of what I should be doing, and finding things that make me happy and things that fill my cup, as they say, things that are so much more fulfilling than what I should be doing. So, the first couple of episodes of this season are going to be a little bit deeper. Maybe not the next episode, I'm talking about goals, but the first couple of episodes are going to be a little bit deep, talking about perfect, how it shows up in your body and your relationships and things like that. But then I also have some episodes on exploring breaking the mold of perfect and how to find creativity and whimsy in order to break out of that mold. So, just to summarize, being perfect shows up in relationships in the form of the results of perfect, which I'm gonna define in just a second. And it also shows up in holding yourself back from doing something creative. It shows up in a way where little boxes in your mind slam shut if you aren't doing what you quote unquote should be doing. If you're laying on the couch because you've had a high stress day and you need a minute, but inside you feel so guilty for laying on the couch, that's a result of perfect because you don't need to earn rest. And I am still learning that. I'm still trying to learn, and now we're learning together. So, the results of perfect, I'm just going to talk about a few of them so that we can define them as a baseline. The first one, which is going to be episode 4 of this podcast, is perfectionism, and I'll have a guest for that episode. So basically, perfectionism is trying to do everything perfectly. And if you don't do it perfectly, you start over, you don't do it at all, leads to overthinking, procrastination, fear of starting, fear of finishing, burnout, frustration, tension. Even if, so I don't consider myself a perfectionist. However, I do have perfectionism tendencies. I overthink like no other. I procrastinate almost religiously, and the fear of starting and finishing is so real, I can't even explain it to you. I never finish anything because I just am worried about it not turning out the way that I want and then defining my self-worth based off of that. The second result that I want to define is validation and perception. So, when you're trying to be perfect, you seek validation internally, externally through some sort of outward indicator like grades. And a bad perception equals a personal failure. What I really want to take from validation and perception more than the external validation, and if not, then you feel like a personal failure from it, and tying your worth to outcome is masking or code switching, creating your image based on who you're with and using that as an identity when that's not your identity, and then talking about how performing isn't living. I have a huge problem with masking, and in the MBA, they call it code switching. That just seems like a more businessy term for masking. Basically, it's where in front of different people, you wear different faces or different personalities to try and match who you're talking to so that they'll like you better. And you don't know that you're doing this because you don't realize. You think, oh, yeah, I am being me. I would say that on a normal day. And, maybe you would. But also, the way that you say it, it's and it's hard to break out of. It's hard to then be in a situation where you need to be somebody else. Oh, a perfect example is like holidays with your family, okay? So you in real life are working your 9 to 5, jamming out to your music, having a great time, whatever. Maybe you're dating, maybe you're not dating. You go home for the holidays, you put on a smile, you walk in, and you act like every single part of your life is totally fine. So that if someone comes up to you and they ask, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in so long. How are you doing? You have an answer to that. And the answer is, oh my God, I'm doing so good, actually. Oh my gosh, things are going so well. No, I'm not dating right now. I just feel like I need some time to focus on me. Yeah, I may be up for a promotion at work soon. Isn't that so cool? How are you doing? How are the kids? Masking. See, the tone of my voice changed. The way that I'm presenting my problems as positives is different. I put on a mask to talk to my family and tell them what's going on with me. Next is boundaries. So, the lack of boundaries, which leads to like people pleasing, going along with things you don't want. I want them to see and be proud of me, self less than everything else, a lack of boundaries. So, perfect erodes boundaries. It turns being capable into being available, which I'm a huge victim of, an overextension where rest needs to be earned. So, personal boundaries is a big thing, familial boundaries, work boundaries. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you want to do something. And that leads us right into the should trap. So, unable to see the difference between should and want equals loss of self, equals unhappy whole, and feeling like you're behind. For example, I have a whole episode on the should trap, so I'm not gonna go too deep into it. But a huge theme in the lives of people around me right now is I feel like I'm doing what I should be doing instead of what I want to be doing. But the problem is I have no idea what I want. And that's because our whole lives we have been perfect and falling victim to these results of perfect, especially falling into the should trap. All you hear your whole life is get good grades, go to college, get a 9 to 5, enter the C-suite, become a millionaire, then pay for me to live in a penthouse. That's all I've heard my whole life. I still hear it now. I even didn't tell some of my family that I was making this podcast because I didn't want to hear what they would have to say. I didn't want them to say that I shouldn't be doing this or that I should be doing something else. So why perfect is appealing? It promises safety, but delivers anxiety. And sometimes it's right, so you stay. And it makes sense that we chase it. Perfect gives us control, predictability, approval, that validation that we seek. And letting go is so scary. And honestly, the path to letting go is so hard. And we don't know the steps. We've never been told the steps. We've always been told to be perfect. But also, I want to stress this really hard because I know I've talked a lot about the results of perfect and how I'm going to give steps to mitigate some of those results and help you find what you want and who you are. But perfect is appealing. And I'm not telling you to not try to be perfect if that's what you want. Your definition of perfect, if that's your ideal wave in life, great. I hope that you get it. Letting go of being perfect is not always entirely necessary. Sometimes you want to have the results of perfect. Sometimes your perfectionism leads to great results. The validation makes you feel good. The being capable turning into available makes you feel wanted and needed, and it validates you further. And the should trap, it makes your family happy. It makes you happy if you want to do the things that they're telling you to do. Being perfect and having these results of perfect aren't bad, and I don't want to villainize them. They are not the villain of this story. They are just a result of something that we've been told to be. And holding on to them, keeping them close to you, is not bad by any means. All I want to do, all my goal is to help you discover you and to help you figure out what you want and what perfect really means to you. I want to redefine the baseline of what perfect is. So, on that, perfect can be neutral. It can be good. It can be bad. It can be the hero. It can be the villain. It can be everything in between. Using perfect as a baseline is fine, but going below that baseline or above that baseline or throwing out the baseline and going somewhere else entirely is fine too. It produces emotional, mental, and relational results. Perfect is a system, not just a standard. What I'm doing in this podcast is questioning this system. So I want to tear apart all of the system of perfect into its little tiny pieces so that we can find the part of the system that isn't working for you and change it. If all of the other parts of the system work, amazing. If they don't, we'll change those too. I want to help you find whimsy and find yourself. And you're listening to this podcast for a reason. I want you to find who you want to be. We aren't fixing. You don't need fixing. We're seeing the system clearly. So, follow along for more breakdowns on perfect. Thank you so much for listening to this episode and figuring out what the perfect baseline is and the understanding. If you like this podcast, follow and subscribe to hear more. I have some really exciting episodes coming up in season 1. And then in season 2, we're going to start to have some really awesome guests and explore some whimsy and some more in-depth discussions about some of the topics that I covered today. This episode will really be used as a baseline for everything else. Also, the podcast has an Instagram. If you are on Instagram, it is darksideofperfect.pod. That's darksideofperfect, period, P-O-D. And I hope that you have an amazing day wherever you are listening to this, and I will see you next time.